This is Ryan from Cincy Life Community News. This is a topic that has came into my life, well, ever since I was little, about the white Native Americans. This is a lesson, teaching of the Mormons, of the Latter-day Saints, which I grew up as a Mormon. I believe their interpretation of the story is false. I don't agree with the Book of Mormon. I think that it's fiction. But I think what happened was Joseph Smith and the people of that time were hearing stories from the Native Americans in that area about these white Native Americans that were here. Nobody believed Joseph Smith. In fact, I was a skeptic up until just recently that this could possibly be true. This isn't what we're taught in high school. This isn't what we're taught in college. This isn't what the textbooks teach, that there were white Native Americans here before the Asian Native Americans. Well, it's true. After all, Joseph Smith was right. There were white people here before there were the brown people. That's the truth. That's the absolute science. That's not hearsay. That's not, hopeful thinking. That's what the facts say. I've documented this over and over, and I just wanted to bring it up because of a conversation that I've had recently and a few others, before this. But tonight, I got this concept, this comment, and I'm not going to give you the name. It doesn't matter. It's somebody I respect and I care about. I'm not trying to hurt anybody here. But here's the point. I saw this. It says, basically the conversation started out about, if a person is disadvantaged, they don't have access to the internet, therefore they're not going to get the education that someone who is advantaged would get. Basically saying that they are blocked from getting education by their position and their poverty. Anyway, my point in return, before the Native American topic started, was, hey, there was people before the internet came out who had greater adversity than, people that are in this day and age that don't have internet. Like Frederick Douglass, for example, who was a slave, who was born as a slave, freed himself, ran away, educated himself, he became a statesman, became a newspaper owner and editor and publisher, and wrote columns, and was very popular. Was nominated for vice president against his will. He didn't want to run for vice president, but he was nominated, and was an influential person in his time, and was even invited to the inaugural speech of President Lincoln, and was around before the whole thing with Lincoln started. So, was known, was in popular culture before Lincoln really got famous, and belonged to the Republican Party. Believe it or not, Frederick Douglass, a black slave who freed himself and became educated, joined the Republican Party, and it was interesting. And Lincoln, obviously, was a Republican who freed the slaves. But there's always this victim mentality, and I'm just like, if other people can overcome, look at Dave Thomas, was born, given up by his parents, was an orphan, high school dropout, ended up being a billionaire, Marcus Garvey, was born poor in Jamaica, came to America, didn't have anything, started his company, the Black Star Line, to prove that black people could do well in business. And could be a competitive factor in shipping, and was amazing, did great, led millions of people with hope and with victory and with a good message. These are all very influential people in my life, and now that it's Martin Luther King's Day coming up and his birthday here in about a week or two, I think he was born on January 15th, and I can't remember the year. Gosh, it evades me. 43? Could be wrong. Anyway, and Martin Luther King Day, I think, is the 23rd. So we do homeschool with our kid, and this is with our children. My daughter right now, Constance, is getting homeschool, and we are able to choose their education and what they get to understand about the world. We don't have to have it filtered through the federal government regulations on politically correct or not politically correct or whatever. We get to give it to our kids how we see it. And then, of course, the school has curriculum that we need to follow, but, we have a pretty liberal ability to give our kids the important facts that a lot of the textbooks leave out. Anyway, this is what was said. The ironic thing about this internet is the hyperconnectivity is leading us back to the values and tradition that traditional societies already had about coexisting with our communities and land and water and the air that supports us. Sustainability, green living, etc. is really hot amongst middle upper folks, but 300 to 400 years ago, the people on this continent who coexisted with the land out of common sense were wiped out because the only way they lived on the land, or because of the way they lived on the land, didn't bear the mark of conquering the land. The model more familiar with European settlers, this happened to indigenous people everywhere, including indigenous Europe. Ireland is an example that I know most about. My prayer is that ultimately the internet, civilization's crowning achievement, will lead us back to the indigenous sensibilities, or lead us back to indigenous sensibilities so that we can heal our relationship with Mother Earth. And these were my points. I just wanted to outline them before I go into this any further and show you some of my references. But first of all, her points were, basically that 300 or 400 years ago, Europeans came and conquered, and the reason why they conquered these people is because the people that were here didn't have the bearing of the mark of conquering the land, so on and so forth. These were peaceful people. They lived with the land. They didn't war. They were nice. They were good to each other. Blah blah blah. Is basically the gist everybody has of Native Americans. I wanted to make a couple of points though. First of all, Native Americans are not the first people in the Americas. Second, the Native Americans, so-called, are actually Asians. DNA work on modern Native Americans have been done and shown that what we have left of the Native Americans all came from Mongolia and China, and they crossed over the Bering Land Bridge. Let's see. Oh, that this is not true when they say let's see, more familiar to European settlers. That white folks came here. The Europeans settled this about 15,000 years ago. Europeans were here first, about 15,000 BC, and that the person that I've been speaking with said that it's not true, that archaeologists disagree with me, that nobody, in any known field of archaeology supports that Caucasians were here before the Asiatic people were here. And I said that's not true, because the Paiutes have oral traditions that they have exterminated, or that they exterminated completely, meaning genocide. The white people were here first. Sara Winnemuca, Life of the Paiutes, that's one of the references. Sara Winnemuca was Chief Winnemuca's daughter, and she wrote about the white Caucasian red-headed giants that lived in the Humboldt Sink in Nevada, in basically Humboldt County, Nevada, thousands of years before the Paiutes showed up, and that they had alliances with them, but those alliances fell apart, and then the Paiute hunted them down and exterminated them till there was nobody left. They completely committed genocide on the Si-Te-Cah. I say, let's see, and then 5, my point is that we need to stop blaming, we need to stop being victims, and we need to stop relying on or relaying false history taught by our government. And 6, the 6th point is that this is why federally controlled education sucks and why we homeschool. You can't trust government information. There's so many politically correct, laws or regulations in education these days that, either they're getting taught something that isn't true, or they're being taught something that doesn't have all the details deliberately, or they're influencing kids with one alternative lifestyle or another against their parents' will, all based on federal regulations. I don't agree with federal regulations. But let me also make this clear. My wife and daughters and son are all Cherokee. My wife's grandma was Cherokee. My wife is about a 16th Cherokee. I knew this when I married her, and I loved it about her. When I was growing up, my dad and grandpa had hunting parties, and we all had Native American names. My grandfather was a chief, and before him, his brother, my Uncle Frank, my great-uncle Frank at that point, I believe, yeah, great-uncle Frank was the chief. But then when he died, my grandpa became the chief. My dad was the brave, and I was the papoose. Later became the brave. When my dad passed away, he had never became chief, and then my grandfather passed away, and now I'm the chief, of our hunting tribe, our hunting party. So, I'm making proposals now. I'm trying to make treaties with Native Americans saying, hey, what happened to you, 400 years ago, 500 years ago by the Europeans, well, your people also did that to my people, the Europeans, who were here in this continent first, and then the Asiatic people who came, the Asian Native Americans, they killed off all of the indigenous white people who were here first. The white people actually were here first. And so my point is that, hey, there's been mercy and there's been, issues, that have been requested or granted in this fight for sovereignty with the Native American tribes. Hopefully they can see my fight, that I want to be free, too. I want to be sovereign. I want to be able to make laws in my own nation that says, hey, as long as you're not hurting anybody else's life, liberty, or property, it's not illegal. I want to be able to grow whatever plants I want to grow, or have whatever weapons I want to have, or teach my kids whatever I want to teach them, whether it's religious or non-religious or whatever, because now there's federal regulations that you can't teach religion in public school and all this. Hey, I just want to have a sovereign nation of my own. I'm not asking anybody for anything. In fact, I would work and trade for it if I needed to. And I would ally with any tribe who wants to grant me sovereignty, and I would fight alongside of them for their sovereignty and to preserve their sovereignty forever. I have no conflict with Native American people. My conflict is with the government and with this false history that we've been taught. Now I'm going to give you some references because, this person said that what I was saying, what my hypothesis was about this, is not true and it's not supported by other archaeologists. I am here to prove that it is not only supported by other archaeologists, but it's supported by many archaeologists, and there's a whole display of these Native Americans that were white at the Nevada State Museum in Carson City, Nevada. Nevada Archaeological Society and the Nevada State Museum and a lot of archaeologists were involved in this, and this has been studied extensively. And these mummies, about 70 of them that were found in the Spirit Cave or the Lovelock Cave, are Caucasian giants, about 7.5 feet tall. The tallest one was about 7.5 feet tall. The rest of them were 6.5 feet to about 7 feet tall. Much bigger than the Asians that came over here that we now call Native Americans. And that's why they called them the red-headed giants. They were white, very large people with red hair. Anyway, this is from the Nevada State Museum, and this is Dr. Jean Hattori, Dr. Jean Hattori of the Nevada State Museum, giving a tour of the museum and of this exhibit of these Caucasian mummies.
2010, I'm here at the Nevada State Museum in Carson City. I'm here with the curator of anthropology, Mr. Jean Hattori. Here we go, Jean. Hi, how are you doing today, Jean?
Pretty good, Heidi.
Okay.
We're here at the museum's Under One Sky exhibit, and this particular display discusses the legend of the Si-Te-Cah. And these are the red-headed giants of Humboldt Sink, and probably get about a call every couple of months about an inquiry about, do you have the skeleton?
Yeah, I think that's how we...
The red-headed...
Yeah, met. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, and no, we don't. But the story is that the Nevada Historical Society had the skeleton of this giant, and it was loaned to the St. Louis Exposition in 1904. And the skeleton unfortunately never made it back to Nevada, and that's the story that we tell. We have some human remains, Native American human remains, but none of them are giant. the Si-Te-Cah story is that the Paiutes have a legend that when they came into the area, there were some red-headed giants.
See, now that's very key right here. He just said, now you can rewind it, he said, when the Paiutes came into the area, they encountered some red-headed giants that were already here. So the Paiutes came into the area, they weren't already here, there was another tribe that was already here. They were the red-headed giants, the Caucasian people. This is from the Paiute oral tradition. It's also from Sara Winnemuca, Chief Winnemuca's daughter, her book called Life Among the Paiutes. If you read her book about this, she talks about the red-headed giants that were here long before the Paiutes ever existed in this country, in this continent.
And these giants were occasionally hostile to the Paiutes in that they wait.
I'll go on here a little bit further. He goes into the wars and stuff, and they had wars, and they had alliances, and then they had wars, and eventually the white Si-Te-Cah were totally exterminated. Actually, I'll let you listen to the rest of that, and then I want to show you some of their artifacts after that.
They laid them and occasionally ate them,
Well,
which wasn't particularly appealing to the northern Paiutes. They went as far as trying to incorporate them into their culture, which they may have done so successfully in some instances, in that we have a story from Sara Winnemuca that she believed that she may have had some Si-Te-Cah genes, some Si-Te-Cah blood, because she had some strands of red hair, and these were the red-headed giants. But basically, the Si-Te-Cah were eventually cornered on the edge of the Humboldt Sink and rounded, more or less retreated into the Lovelock Cave, an interpreted site south of Lovelock, Nevada, that you could visit. But the Si-Te-Cah went into the cave, and to protect themselves, they piled brush in front of the mouth of the cave. The Paiutes shot burning arrows into the brush and burned the Si-Te-Cah up, and they perished. And the legend has it, and you can see the charring on the roof of the cave.
interesting. That'd be interesting to go out there.
Yeah, yep. And like I said, you can check in with the Bureau of Land Management, and they have brochures that will guide you there. The Si-Te-Cah may be associated with the archaeological Lovelock culture. And the Lovelock culture was first described by Robert Heiser out of UC Berkeley, and his predecessors also out of UC Berkeley, Llewellyn Loud and Mark Raymond Harrington, actually out of the Southwest Museum. But they excavated the cave beginning in the 1910s and continuing into the 1970s, and recovered artifacts that they described as Lovelock culture. And these are some of the artifacts they do indeed.
See, this is advanced, very advanced for any Native Americans. I mean, this is a duck decoy. They made also sewing needles, eyed sewing needles, which were unknown at the time of many of these Native American tribes. They had very advanced tools. These Si-Te-Cah, as well as the Solutreans and the Clovis Indians, they were all white American Indian tribes, or Native American tribes, that came from Europe, not from Asia. And these are just some of the artifacts. There's a whole bunch of them at this museum. I'll show you some more here. Their fabrics were woven so intricately that it was unmatched by anything found from Native American tribes at that time. These people had an intricate technology that they brought with them from Europe that Native Americans had no knowledge of whatsoever, which is a very unique thing.
Native Americans dating from Spirit Caveman 10,500 years ago to...
Oh yeah, Spirit Caveman is another one from this area. Spirit Caveman is one you should look up. I haven't got that actually on this video or on these clips that I'm going to show you. But look up Spirit Caveman, look up Kennewick Man, look up the mummies from Florida. They found about 170 mummies buried in peat and almost perfectly preserved they're also Caucasians. So they found them in Florida. They found them all over Minnesota. They found them in the Dakotas. They found them in, obviously, Humboldt County, Nevada, all over Nevada. They found a Kennewick man up in Kennewick, Washington, and like 170 or more, I can't remember the exact number they found in California so far, that were Caucasian mummies. But this particular one was exhumed by accredited universities, anthropologists from university projects that are well accredited, well-known scientists all throughout the last century. I'll show you another one. This is the Solutreans. This shows the Native Americans that were from Europe that existed here in 15,000 BC. I'm just going to show you a brief clip of this, and then you can look this up. It's called Ice Age Columbus. It was on Discovery. I believe you can just find it on discovery.com. If you want to find it on YouTube, this is the title of it here on YouTube. But it is from Discovery, so I believe you can either order the DVD or watch it directly on their site. And I'm just going to give you a brief clip of this because I've got one more to show you after.
Ice Age North America, vast and uninhabited. A frozen land dominated by beasts. Who first set foot on this empty continent is the greatest mystery in North American archaeology. But now a new discovery is rewriting history. This spear point is the oldest man-made object ever found in North America. Scientists believe that whoever made it discovered the continent. During the worst climate our species ever endured, they set out on an epic journey. Struggled across phenomenal distances. Faced incredible dangers. And against all odds, reached the New World. But the biggest revelation of all is where these first Americans came from.
They came from Europe. And that's a fact. It's not a hypothesis. That's a fact. Let me give you one more here.
Lovelock, Nevada. In the early 1800s, local legends passed down by the Paiute Indians told of a race of giants who were exterminated by their tribe. It is said this was done by trapping the giants in a cave, shooting arrows at them, and then starting a large fire at the mouth of the cave. Evidence of the slaughter lay undisturbed until the early 20th century.
Lovelock Cave was first discovered by local ranchers who were looking for bat guano to use in their fields.
In need of fertilizer for their crops, the ranchers removed nearly 10 feet of guano-enriched soil from the surface of the cave.
And then they began finding human remains. They found up to 40 or 50 people inside this cave. One was allegedly 7 feet, 7 inches tall. They all had long, red hair and were literal giants.
If these skeletons were the remains of the legendary red-haired giants, were they visitors from distant continents?
Throughout the 19th century, many giant skeletons were allegedly discovered in the Midwest, also in parts of California and around Death Valley. And the skeletons here found at Lovelock
are one of the few that were really excavated by an accredited university.
Archaeologists from the Nevada Historical Society and the University of California believe the cave was occupied from approximately 1500 BC until a few hundred years before white men appeared in the Nevada territory.
See, now they say that this cave was inhabited for 1500 years BC till, just a few hundred years before the white man came from Europe, the second time around. But, all the other research shows, like the Solutreans, like the Kennewick man, he was 9,400 years old. And all these, spirit caveman that was found in the same area was 10,500 years old. So, even though this cave had only been inhabited, according to the scientists in this documentary, for about 1,500 years BC onward, there's all these other mummies that were far older than that, like even in the same area, the same Humboldt Sink area, Spirit Caveman, like I said, was 10,500 years old. Let me play a little bit more of this because I want to show you where they have these skulls. They don't show them in front of the museum, in a display. They've got them in back, but some people have access to them, like this scientist here.
75 miles from the cave site, a local museum has preserved several skulls that some believe are recovered remains of the giants.
Inside this cabinet here are 3 skulls from the Lovelock caves. When you first see these skulls, they seem to be pretty much normal-looking skulls. However, it's when we really start to compare the jawbones with this modern dental impression of a normal adult male that we see that these jawbones are unusually large. And these are really the skulls of giant people who were perhaps 7, even 8 feet tall. One of the odd things with these skulls is that they're not actually put on display here at the museum, and they're kept hidden in this cabinet. Now, we don't know if that's really just out of respect for the Native Americans, or whether there's really something unusual about these giant skulls that they don't want them to display.
Well, the skulls look like Caucasian skulls. They're Caucasoid. That's one of the big things. Scientists don't want to rewrite history. The government doesn't want to rewrite history. Nobody wants to admit they were wrong. Well, the fact is, they were wrong. Native Americans defend these remains often and get them back before they're able to be studied, before they're able to get DNA testing done on them. But Kennewick Man had DNA testing done on him, and many of the other mummies have had DNA testing done on them, and they're from the haplogroup X. They're Caucasians. They're not Asians. And so these are the white mummies. These are the white ancient Native Americans that were here before anybody. I know that the person I've been disagreeing with on this doesn't believe me. There's no other scientists that believe this, no support for this whatsoever. But that is incorrect. There's plenty of support for this, plenty of archaeological research and scientists with with very good names in science that have said the same thing. Oh, and let me show you this last one. I'm just going to wrap it up with this one because this one's very interesting.
But scientists claim that the mummy is so old that he couldn't possibly be related to the Paiute Shoshones, that the mummy's tribe was here thousands and thousands of years before anybody else.
They do not appear similar to any living Native American in North America. They have receding cheekbones, narrow face, long face. Some Indians have some of those traits, but as a group, those are Caucasoid traits.
The two sides are now caught in a catch-22. One way to prove kinship is through the DNA test, but the tribe doesn't want that because it will require further disturbance of the remains.
Anyway, there you go. That's my presentation on how white people don't need to feel guilty about things that they never participated in. My family, myself, anybody that I know did not oppress or hurt or malign anybody in this country or any other country that I know of. But the people that came to this country that were from my tribe, the people that were from like Scotland and England and Ireland, and they came over here, and if you look at what happened to the Irish in this country, they were treated like dogs. You know, they used to put signs up in businesses that say, help wanted, Irish need not apply. You know, just the most horrendous things they'd say and do to the Irish people, and just treat them like scum. You know, if they weren't indentured servants, a lot of them were slaves through indentured servitude, but many of them were not even given that opportunity. Many of them were starved and shunned and pushed out of society. You know, every culture has had their rough points in this country, but I don't think that makes anybody more special than another. I don't believe that some people deserve special rights and other people do not. You know, I think that if some people are going to be granted sovereignty, everybody should. You know, we're all created equal in this country. I agree with that. I don't mean, and I have no intentions on persecuting anybody. I just want everybody to be treated fairly and equally. You know, not that everybody should get handouts so that everybody is equal financially or, you know, whatever, but just that we're treated under the law the same way as one another. One person doesn't get more rights than the other person because of this or because of that. Everybody has the same, you know, level playing field as far as rights and respect and opportunity goes, you know, without government interference. That's all.